Oh, right. This is my week two UFL power ranking. So let's get started here. Number eight, we're going to have the Houston Roughnecks, who are now 0-1. They lost 18 to 12 versus the Memphis Showboats. Their quarterback, Jarrett Garantano, he was okay. He was 16 for 21, which is good for about 157 yards, 22 rushing yards, a touchdown, and a fumble. Um, Isaiah Hinney for them also had two lost fumbles as well, which is the main reason they lost that game. They could not take care of the ball. Having three offensive turnovers is definitely not a good look. Isaiah Hinney did muff a punt, so technically that was a special teams turnover, but that was not a good look. Because at the end of that game here, for this Roughnecks game, we had a lot of different stuff going on in this game. And having Isaiah Hinney muff a punt at the end of the game when you're down by six is definitely not a great look. I would say Jarrett Garantano was not, that bad, but he did hold on to the ball a little bit too long, which definitely led to some issues. But he was pretty efficient for the most part. But overall, the Houston Roughnecks definitely looked like the weakest team this week. They will be getting Mark Thompson back at running back, which should be good for them. He was a good running back last year. They said he should be back to be playing for them next week. He was a little bit injured this week, so hopefully getting Mark Thompson back can help you guys out a lot. But this week was not a great look here for the Houston Roughnecks. Number 7 is going to be the Arlington Renegades, who went 0-1 on the week, which is not a great look for them as well. They had a rematch against the Birmingham Stallions. Well, not a rematch. I guess it was a champion versus champion game there. They lost 27 to 14. Louis Perez, their quarterback here, had 214 yards, one passing touchdown, one interception, and one lost fumble. Not a great look for him. He's usually a lot better than that. I do think he's still one of the better quarterbacks in this league. But that was not a great look to have two turnovers to only one touchdown. And then receiver Isaiah Winstead had 60 receiving yards and one touchdown for them, so he was pretty good. But overall, the Arlington Renegades were not playing amazing football in this game. They did have a 50-yard touchdown to Isaiah Winstead, which was good to start off this game. But then after that, they did not look very good, for the rest of this game. So next up, we're going to have number 6 is the DC Defenders. They also, lost this week, now 0-1. They lost 27 to 12 versus the San Antonio Brahmas. Definitely looked like like one of the worst teams in football. Jordan Teamu at quarterback was pretty good. He had 253 yards. He was fairly inefficient, but he did have multiple receivers drop passes. He just did not really have a whole lot of help. I still think he's one of the better quarterbacks in this league. But this week he did not play particularly amazing. He had 253 yards, which is good for this UFL league, but his efficiency was only about 55% completion, which is not good. They got wide receiver Tyler Scott, who had 87 receiving yards, which is good to see there. But overall, they did not score a single touchdown in this game. They had 4 field goals by kicker Matt McCrane, which is good, but overall, not the best performance here for the DC Defenders. They did have a touchdown play that got called back for a turnover, which definitely hurts them a little bit here. He actually had 2 different touchdown passes that got called back for a penalty. So it's not necessarily, the defender's fault, like not necessarily Jordan Teamu's fault or the receiver's fault. I think it was a lineman penalty both times. So definitely would like to see them crack down on those penalties and get those under control, and then they could probably be one of the better teams in football still going forward. Number 5 is going to be the Memphis Showboats, who went 1-0 this week. They did pretty solid. They beat the Roughnecks 18 to 12. Case Cookis looked pretty good, 200 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. But overall, this was a fairly underwhelming game. They did end up winning, which is good, obviously, but overall was not even that entertaining. Let's see. Yeah, started off with the Roughnecks having a fumble, and then the Showboats got an easy touchdown off of that, and then Case Cookis threw a pick, and then they just didn't really play amazing football this game, but they did get the win. It just was not the most impressive win, but a win is a win nonetheless, which is obviously good, but I don't think they looked better than our number 4 team here, which is going to be the St. Louis Battlehawks, even though they lost, the Battlehawks lost this week to the Michigan Panthers 18-16. I still think the Battlehawks were more impressive this week than the Memphis Showboats. Um, the Battlehawks lost by 2 points. AJ McCarron had over 216 yards, 2 touchdowns, which is pretty good. Receiver Marcel Aitman had 6 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown. Their tight end Jake Sutherland had 45 yards and a touchdown. So like their offense was actually pretty solid. I mean, they put up only 16 points of offense, which is not great, but like it's not that bad for this UFL. They did have some issues here throughout this game on the defensive side of the ball. They actually had some good plays, but then they let up some stuff they should not have. They got an interception right off the bat. Then they didn't do anything with it, but then they got another interception the very next possession. So they got 2 interceptions in a row. Um, then they let up, but they still could not do anything on offense at the beginning of that game. And they let up a touchdown. And they got their own touchdown. They let up another touchdown. Got their own touchdown again. And that's essentially how it went. They did not really get their offense going at the beginning of the game, but their defense was rolling at the beginning of the game. And then after that, the script kind of flipped. Their offense started clicking, and their defense started letting up scores and stuff. And then ultimately, they let up a 64-yard game-winning field goal at the end of the game, which you can't be too upset about that if you're a Battlehawks fan. You lost on a 64-yard game-winning field goal, which is pretty impressive. So I wouldn't be too upset. And I think they still definitely played a really solid game. And AJ McCarron definitely looked like one of the better quarterbacks this week. Number 3 is going to be the Michigan Panthers, who went 1-0 on the week. Like I just said, they just beat the St. Louis Battlehawks 18-16. So I personally thought the Panthers were going to be the worst team coming into this week. I thought the Battlehawks would be the best team coming into this week. So seeing the Panthers get a win here certainly was surprising to me. But overall, they actually played really solid. Their quarterback, like I said, threw 2 touchdowns at the beginning of the game. But then, E.J. Perry ended up throwing for 176 yards and ran for 2 touchdowns. And their running back is amazing. Wes Hills had 85 rushing yards. They also had a safety, Kai Nakua, who's actually Puka Nakua's brother. He had 11 tackles in this game, which was really, really good to see there. And then obviously their kicker, Jake Bates, hit the 64-yard game-winning field goal. So with a kicker like that who's able to nail 64-yard field goals, you guys could definitely, be winning more games than I thought you were, because basically as long as you get the ball across midfield, you guys can kick a field goal every single possession. And, he's obviously probably not going to make all of those kicks, but like he makes 65-yarders at a decent clip because he had plenty of distance on that kick, and he actually made it twice in a row because they iced him the first time and he made it, and then he made the second one when it counted for real. So he drilled 2 64-yard field goals back to back with plenty of distance on him. So shows me at least I think he can do that consistently, or at least somewhat consistently, which means this team gets across midfield and they get automatic points, which is obviously going to be really good for them going forward. Number 2 is going to be the San Antonio Brahmas. They went 1-0 on the week, which is a pretty solid week there for the Brahmas. They beat the Defenders 27-12, and I thought the Defenders would be one of the better teams of this league, but this first week they did not look like that. Quarterback Chase Garbers for the San Antonio Brahmas. He was in the NFL recently. He was like a practice squad player, I believe, for the Las Vegas Raiders. He had 164 total yards here, with 2 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. So really solid there, having 3 total touchdowns. Receiver John Trey Kirkland had 61 yards and a touchdown, as well as 1 fumble, which is not great. But they got linebacker Jordan Williams, who had 10 tackles this game, which is obviously really, really good to see there. I thought Chase Garbers looked like probably one of the best quarterbacks of the league right now, as well as running back Anthony McFarland, who was on the Pittsburgh Steelers recently in the NFL. He caught their first touchdown of the game. And then, they just played really good ball throughout the majority of this game. And they had a special teams play where they were going to kick a field goal, and then they ran a fake field goal where their punter, Brad Wing, ended up throwing a 40-yard touchdown pass to center Alex Millette. So that's definitely probably the play of the week. Either that or Jake Bates, 64-yard game-winning field goal. But that was obviously a really good play to see for the San Antonio Brahmas in this game. Number 1 is going to be the Birmingham Stallions. I had them at number 2 Probably should have had them at number one because they've been the best spring league football team for the last, 2 years already. Since the USFL has started, they've won back-to-back championships, and probably should have had them at number one coming into the week. But I figured I thought the Battlehawks looked better than they showed, but definitely still think the Stallions are one of the best teams. They won 27-14 over the Arlington Renegades. Quarterback Matt Corral, who was on the Carolina Panthers as a third-round pick just 2 years ago, um, threw for 200 yards, had a touchdown and a pick. They also had quarterback Adrian Martinez, who came in for a little bit. He was at K-State when they won the Big 12 championship just 2 seasons ago. He came in and threw for about 26 yards and ran for 52 yards. His main threat is his legs. Had 50 yards rushing, only like 4 or 5 rushing attempts, which is really good there. He also threw a pick, which isn't great to see, but they got running back C.J. Marable, who had over 100 all-purpose yards with a touchdown, so he probably looked like the best running back of the week. And we got wide receiver Deion Kane, who had 66 yards and a touchdown, who looked like one of the best receivers of the week. So they got, probably, top two running back, top 3, 5 receiver in the league, probably top three-ish, and top two running back, and probably a top, Matt Corral is probably one of the top 4 quarterbacks of the week ish, something around there. So definitely looked like the best all around team out of any team this first week. So looking at our standings here, XFL conference, you got the Brahmas at 1-0 with everybody else at 0-1. In the USFL, you got oh God. You got the Stallions, Showboats, and Panthers at 1-0, and the Roughnecks should be 0-1. Accidentally put them in there at 1-0. My bad. But yeah. Quarterback power rankings here. So I got Chase Garbers looking at number one right now, with AJ McCarron at 2, Jordan Teamu at 3, Lou Perez at 4, Jarrett Garantano at 5, Matt Corral at 6, Case Cook is at 7, and EJ Perry at 8. I did not think that any of these quarterbacks really had a bad week this first week. EJ Perry was the worst quarterback, but he did have 2 rushing touchdowns, which obviously helps his numbers. These other guys, some of them were fairly inefficient and had some, turnover issues, but I would expect them to get those kind of under control over the next couple of weeks. This is their first football game in, a long time for some of these guys, so would expect them to get those issues under control. But I think we had fairly solid football play all week long. Looking at our attendance here, for this Stallions and Renegades, it was at the Arlington Renegades Stadium at Choctaw Stadium. They had over 14,000 people in attendance, which is pretty good to see. Battlehawks versus Panthers at Ford Field in Michigan there had a little over 9,000 in attendance there. The Defenders versus the Brahmas at the Alamo Dome there in San Antonio had about 13,000 people in attendance. And then the Showboats versus Roughnecks at Audi Field there in Houston had a little over 9,000 in attendance. So on average, it's roughly around like 11 to 12,000 in attendance, which is that's solid numbers. You'd like to see it maybe a little bit higher, but I know coming next week, we're going to see those numbers go up a little bit. The Defenders, I believe, have a home game next week, and they should get quite a bit of attendance there. I would expect close to 20,000 there at the Defenders home opener, and the St. Louis Battlehawks will probably get over 40,000 there. Battlehawks definitely got the largest fan base out of anybody, and I would expect the Stallions, honestly, as well, to have more fans in either of these 4 stadiums in this first week as well. So we'll probably have a bigger number of attendance there for next week, with just having bigger fan bases, I think. In DC, Birmingham, and St. Louis, I really don't know what to think about Memphis. They'll probably have a pretty small attendance. That's probably around the 9,000 rank as well. But DC should have close to 20,000. I would expect Birmingham to have at least 15 to 20,000 as well. And St. Louis, St. Louis averaged nearly 38,000 last year. So I would assume for their home opener this year, they'll probably be somewhere around 40,000 there. Looking at our viewership on TV, Arlington Birmingham game, that was our first game of the weekend. Had 1.18 million viewers, so about close to 1.2 million viewers there, which is pretty good on Fox. Michigan and St. Louis had almost 1.35 million viewers, which is solid there on Fox as well. Then looking at the games on ESPN, they took quite a bit of a dip. San Antonio and DC had about 960K, so a little bit short of a million, and then Houston and Memphis just had about 700K on ESPN there. And then for an average of roughly 1.05 million viewers per game, which is it's good to see them over 1 million. That's probably a good threshold. You want them to see a very minimum over 1 million average a game, which they got. It is interesting to see that our Fox games, fared way better than our um, ESPN games, but they're also competing with some other. They're competing with college basketball this weekend, which is obviously going to be a big deal there, but they're not going to be really going away from that competition. They got the college basketball Final Four going on next week. They got to compete with, and after that, they're going to be competing with NBA playoffs all the way up until June, which is right around time their season's actually going to be ending. So they're going to have competition almost every single weekend. So as long as you can see them, above 1 million average per week, you're probably feeling pretty good about themselves. Next up, oh, that's it. Sorry. Yeah, thank you for watching. Make sure to check back next week for an updated power rankings list. Also, make sure to check out my NBA videos as well. And yeah, thank you for watching.